But does anyone have any questions? The lady in the burqa, surely.
Things going on in there. It was very complex. Was that difficult to just weave it all together?
The question was it difficult to have so many different themes and things going on, and how you weave it together? A lot of issues. And well, yeah, it was. I mean, I care a lot about these things. So I've written a lot of Hollywood thrillers, and I like the thriller form. But I was kind of a little bored with what I was doing, and I'd written 2 books, and I found that a very pleasant experience. And the idea of going back to Hollywood and doing work for the studio didn't seem very attractive. And I thought, I'm just going to write a thriller, which I love doing, and put into it things that I am genuinely interested in, which will be an almost certain guarantee of it not getting made. So it was kind of a huge relief to be writing this thing that was going to be dead before it was born. And then I sort of thought, actually, it's quite good, and I showed it to a few people, and I wrote it and rewrote it and wrote it and rewrote it. And, but, you know, it was just, but they're things I care about, you know, and so it wasn't that difficult. It's more difficult to write stuff that you don't care about. I hope that's an answer.
Did you happen to write issues that you were just interested in and you threw them together, or did you have one character that you had wanted to follow, or do you have an end that you wanted to start with? What was your jumping off point?
So to speak. I don't know if anybody heard that. What was my sort of starting off point? It was the idea of, I mean, I'm a fairly up and down kind of a character and can be quite depressed and so on. And I imagine the loneliness of being on a ledge, and me, myself, being on a ledge, and what it would be like, and what you'd be willing to die for. And it occurred to me that there are probably more things that we'd all die for than you would imagine. That, you know, I mean, particularly if you have a child. I have my daughter here today. Once you have a child, I think you realize very quickly that you would certainly die for that. So that's one thing you know you have the courage to do. But you know, you read about things. There was a guy in New York who was driving across the Tappan Zee Bridge, which is a tall bridge, and he saw a complete stranger starting to jump over the bridge. He got out of his car, jumped over the bridge into the water and died to save this person he didn't know at all. And so I think I was interested in that aspect of sacrifice, and I think there are many, many courageous people in the world, some of whom have faith and some of whom don't. And I sort of wanted to do a character who had the courage to do this, who didn't have faith and didn't think he was going to go to an afterlife. So, yes?
You know, it's really interesting dying for another person or dying for an abstract thought. It just raises some interesting questions.
Oh,
so thanks.
Thank you. I'm dying from a question. You must have a question. Come on.
It leaves you with a sort of really raw feeling, like it hurts, but not in a bad way. Did you mean to hurt
You mean
anyone?
to watch the film was painful and raw?
It was, but not in a way that would. It hurts, but as a reminder, like a good kind of hurt.
Oh, thank you. She said, well, it was painful to watch, but it was painful in a good way, and I think you're saying that it was affirmative of potential decency of people, even when they're sinners like me. Yes?
Yeah, so you brought up some very valid concerns about religious fundamentalist dialogue and its impact on society in general, as well as personal impacts. I'm wondering if you could talk about who you see as the audience that's going to be moved by it. Because there are parts that were polemical that I'm wondering, like, if you're seeing those getting into the religious fundamentalist mind and, you know, making them wake up and say, oh, wow, you know, maybe I need to re-examine this. Or if your motivation is to, like, motivate more of the moderate segment of the population that would say, wow, okay, I need to be more
The question, I think, really is who might be willing, who might see this film, and who in the fundamentalist community might be affected, and who in more moderate forms of belief would be affected, and how the film might affect people. I suspect that when I wrote my books, which were about science and religion, really, and one of them was set in the South, non-fiction books, and one in rural Pennsylvania. And my experience was in dealing with fundamentalists and young people who might become fundamentalists or might become something else, and people who are firm fundamentalists who will definitely never become something else, and people who I met who I felt, if they had not had faith, like Joe, they would simply fall apart, and it was an absolute necessity for them. But what I found was, in meeting these people, and I met a lot of them, was that what I had in common with them that they liked was that though I disagreed with them, I wasn't apathetic about issues of ethical behavior and right and wrong and sacrifice. And what I think that both a fundamentalist and I would have in common is a dislike of apathy, of moral apathy, of not thinking about these things and just simply running your life on a selfish basis. So I have a feeling that fundamentalists and fundamentalist communities, where you have all kinds of different layers of belief and doubt, I think they'll like it. I don't think they'll be, I mean, some will be offended, obviously, they're really kind of radical, angry ones. But I think that, I hope that there aren't too many of them and they're not too angry. And I also had an experience with young people watching this film, when I say young, everything's young compared to me, but sort of 20, 25, 30, that particularly people who were beginning to sort of think about being humanists as opposed to believers were very sort of encouraged by the film and felt empowered. I'm rambling on, aren't I? But the thing that's most surprised me, I mean, I knew I was going to appeal and irritate and all of that stuff. What I didn't expect, and what I've had a lot of in various screenings, is women coming up to me afterwards and saying, do you realize you've done a really painful portrayal of an oppressive, possibly abusive marriage? And that when Liv Tyler is walking out of the jail and she goes like that and leaves, that women have said to me that is so empowering for women who have been through that kind of relationship, and it's very moving for them. That I didn't expect at all, and I was obviously very pleased about that. Yes?
Go back to the same scene as the previous questioner with the polemic. That really explained a lot of the rest. That was a very brilliant scene. I want to talk about the Stratocaster in that scene. It was telling us so many things of Joe screaming and shooting the Stratocaster, and how did you get that kind of vision? You put that in there, but it really was indicative of some of these things that we'll talk about later.
Well, I think it was that he's had this past, and I think that's the first sort of sign. You see, he's very adept with a guitar, and he's not just a guy working in the oil company. And I've had questions about how I shot that scene, because the obvious way to do those kinds of scenes is to have the camera moving in and out and round, and because it's so static, if you move the camera, people get the feeling that there's actually something not static about it. I thought, no, it is static, they are having a debate, I'm not even going to have close-ups. And so it's a very flat thing. I didn't want to favor anybody with any kind of emphasis visually. And I just thought, I had these two wonderful actors. It might be okay just to have them speaking to each other, and perhaps people would be engaged just on that level and not be distracted by anything. And, it was I'm sounding braver than I am. I only had a day to shoot both those scenes, and so there wasn't a lot of opportunity for this kind of stuff. So.
So good. I think it was brilliant to put that in there. You just had that idea.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Who else? In the back.
So I appreciate the concept of lack of moral apathy you just touched on. I felt like the strongest common denominator in the film, though, was the way in which everyone was able to communicate what their pain was, right?
Yes.
Was that really intentional? And
Oh, thank you. That's a very nice comment and a question, really, of how intentional it was to sort of slowly reveal that everybody in the film is suffering from some sort of pain, and that in fact is the universal common denominator. And that's, I mean, I don't know if it's because, I mean, I've suffered a fair amount in my life. My mother was an alcoholic. The film is dedicated to my uncle, who was, and my uncle and his boyfriend, who were gay in England at a time when it was illegal, and they suffered a lot. And, you know, one has deaths and disappointments, and so everybody has some sort of pain, and some of it is necessary and some of it isn't. Some of it is caused from outside, and some of it is just caused because people die and you lose children and parents and so on. And I think that's really what is the basis for every kind of faith, is how people endure pain, how you find the way to make life livable even though you keep having this pain and losses and all the rest of it. And some people find it in religious faith, which I totally understand. I mean, I'm not a believer, but when my mum died, I remember for several weeks afterwards I would say, "Oh, Mum, I hope you're okay up there," you know, and I think, you don't believe in that stuff, you know, but you kind of do in a way in your heart, because you just, it's just so unendurable, pain sometimes. And I'm sure all of us here have suffered pain, and I have the greatest sympathy for anybody who finds a way to make pain endurable, so long as the way in which they find that method of survival doesn't adversely impact other people and cause cruelty to them. So that's my faith. I'd love to do 100 more, but one more?
What led you to select that movie as the site of this amazing film?
Economics. Let's have one more. Yes.
There's one right here.
Yes, the man in the blue shirt.
Yeah, I was curious. I found that when I teared up in the film and deeply moved was when the detective delivers the line, you know, "'Cause I'm your dad." And it's interesting because the death didn't have the same impact, right? And I'm curious what your personal feeling is about, you know, the most moving part of the film, and what audience reactions have been.
Well, I think people react to all kinds of different things. Some people react to his jumping and are very moved by that, and some people are moved by Terence going home to his family. I suppose probably I'm most moved by that because, like a lot of stuff in this film, I think my gay uncles and so on, that actually has some, I mean, my mother had an affair with my father's business partner and got pregnant by him, and my father found a note and realized that this son that had just been born wasn't his, and forgave my mother, continued to be in business with the partner even, and raised the son as his own. And I didn't learn this till I was about 25, 30, and my brother didn't learn it till he was in his 40s. And I thought that was an incredibly big thing to do, to be able to get over that for the sake of it. There were 4 of us kids, and this was one of them. We had no idea he wasn't our whole brother. And to me that was an act of great mercy, you know, and my father also wasn't a believer. You know, mercy is everything, I think, you know, that condemnation is the worst thing, mercy is the best thing. And my father had mercy and did this thing, and so I always find that very moving when Terence decides to say, they're kids, they're human beings, they're family, she made a mistake, whatever it was, let's get on with it, you know. So that's... Thank you very much.